Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Rebecca, who is an intermediate photographer from Tennessee. Rebecca says she shot this in her small home studio and that she's been working lately on portrait lighting and her Photoshop work relative to portrait retouching. And let's get right into the critique today. One of the things I love about this image is Rebecca's lighting relative to the eyes. It goes without saying that the eyes are, in so many portraits, the most important part of the image, and Rebecca has a great sparkle to the eyes overall and real dramatic catch lights. Really draws our attention to where it probably should go in this photograph. Even though the lighting is sort of open and even overall, there's still a flow to the light. You see on the top half of the portrait some subtle drop shadows underneath the different features of the face, and more of a dramatic feeling of drop shadows in the lower part of the portrait. And you see an overall feeling of flow of light from this side being bright to this side being darker, both in the lower part of the portrait and in the face. The difference between highlight and shadow is what creates the illusion of form. And so even though the lighting is open and soft here, there's still a dimension to the lighting that I really like. Something else that Rebecca has worked with in this image is something that I point out quite a bit when I'm teaching portraiture, whether it's a formal portrait like this or impromptu portraits. And it's the idea of tying the background and the portrait subject together, working with this little bit of color theory. It's where you might take a minor color idea on the portrait subject, like black here that's happening in and around the eyes, and make it the dominant background idea, or vice versa. We might change this background out for a painted background that was mostly, let's say, muted blue with just some flecks of warm tones that would harmonize the dominant color idea in the foreground of the portrait. That really exciting mix of harmony where two things are the same, but there's a very different amount of the same thing relative to background and portrait subject is a really powerful way to tie background and portrait subject together and have unity, but then at the same time have it be dynamic. The other thing that I'm enjoying in this image is the negative space shapes. They don't flatten out, fairly dynamic space shape, and the two space shapes are the same in terms of shape but different in terms of size, and that helps to keep things dynamic. And it also plays off of this, in terms of the proportion, it plays off of the way the pose here is presenting the shoulders. Dominant shoulder here, and then dominant space shape on the other side to balance out. Minor space shape here, and the shoulder going away here. I think those things are working pretty well. When it comes to perfect world improvement, I'd love to see a couple of variations of this one if we're just talking about what happened in camera. There's a real strong sense of symmetry with this being shot straight in, both on the face and also with the way the hair is framing the face. And we've already mentioned it in the negative space shapes. And that symmetry falls down a little bit in this one area with this arm going away. You've got sort of the repetition of semicircles that happens here, and then that kind of goes away. And I'd love to see the arm pull forward in one variation a little bit more here. The other thing I'd love to see is a variation where the face is just tilted maybe a little bit off center, or the head is turned so it's not quite so straight in, one that's just a little bit more dynamic. When it comes to post-processing, I'd like to make things more dynamic. I'd like to create more of a feeling of the flow of light that's already there, moving in this direction, and I'd like to do that in a way that's going to bring the face forward more. With all of the open lighting, the hair and the lower part of the portrait have a lot of weight. I'd like to cut down on the weight of those things and really make this person's face, which is very beautiful, and the eyes and the nose and the lips, the dominant features of the face, come forward a little bit more. So let's look at the work that I've done to create that effect. The first thing that I did was I came in and I changed the shape of the catch lights. If I'm going to create a feeling that light is coming more from right to left, then it won't be believable if the catch light looks like the light is centered and evenly weighted. So I'm going to change the shape of the catch light. I'm going to take it from what looks almost like a ring light to something that's shaped a little bit more like this, like a softbox angled on this side. And I'm also going to use cloning to get rid of this highlight in the hair that's running right along the edge that really can pull your eye way up here in the portrait. And so here are those changes. You'll see the catch lights changing in shape and being weighted to our right, and you're going to see that bright area at the top of the head get cloned out or go away. The next thing that I did was a little bit of a soft focus filter on both some areas of the face to de-emphasize those areas and again make the exciting features of the face come forward. And I wanted to put a little bit of a blur on the hair. It's very detailed against the background, and I want to soften that. So there's the soft focus filter. I'll turn that on and off again one more time. The next thing that I did was use curves to start to push for this more dramatic lighting pattern. You're going to see me make everything in the image with the exception of this area right in here go much darker, and I'll turn that layer on. There it is. I did this change in luminosity blending mode so that color wouldn't be affected, but even doing it in luminosity blending mode, you can see that the skin has become much warmer and more saturated. So I came in and used hue saturation to get rid of that, to bring this a little bit back more towards the neutral skin tone. And then I came in and did a curves adjustment where I accentuated the contrast in the eyes, on the nose, on the lips, and on this side of the face, just continuing to push for this more dramatic lighting pattern. And there's that change. The next thing that I did was I tried to create overall a feeling that the light was more of a hard light source, just continuing to push this lighting pattern. And I've applied that almost everywhere to the image. And that's that change. I did this in normal blending mode because I wanted the sort of, I wanted the drama of adding a little bit of the color and saturation that I knew would come with that change to basically what was the middle of the curves, making it more dramatic, steepening that part of the curve. But I didn't want that change in saturation and warmth to appear everywhere. So I came back in and I used a hue saturation layer and then a color balance layer to get rid of that warmth in a lot of places. And I left it on the lips and on the eyes, in the makeup around the eyes, and in some areas on the cheeks. And then the very last thing that I did here was one of the last things I do in a lot of my Photoshop work to any image, from landscape, architecture, people. I'll create a blank layer, go to soft light blending mode, I'll paint with black at a very low opacity to accentuate the existing lighting pattern and to try and create more form by exaggerating the shadows, creating more exaggerated difference between highlight and shadow, but trying to do that relative to the lighting pattern that already exists in the image. And so here's that layer. Here's where we started, and here is where we ended up, with the goal being to bring the face forward more and make the exciting part of the features of the face, nose and eyes and mouth, come forward more in the portrait. So one more time, there's before and there's after. I'd love to hear your feedback about this. Would love to hear from Rebecca. Want to say a big thank you to Rebecca for submitting a beautiful portrait. Beautiful light in the eyes here, really nice flow of light to create the potential for a lot of form in the portrait. Really great job of harmonizing the portrait subject with the background. Big thank you to Rebecca for sharing this image with us on the Mindful Eyes Daily Critique.